What's going on, guys? It is Andrew back here with another video. In today's video, we're making a tier list of all these April monthly cards because there's a ton of cards to go over. I didn't really want to do a gameplay for them just because there's so many cards, so we're going to go ahead and do a tier list from S to F like you normally see. We're going to start with the 95 overalls and continue as we go on. So we're going to start with this Shredder here. I think he's a pretty decent card overall. I mean, he's got good speed. He can play multiple secondary positions. He's got good contact, but I don't think he's going to be used in a lot of Diamond Dynasty rosters. I mean, overall, just because, you know, he's not the most flashiest player we've seen. You know, a lot of people love power. He does got really good vision and really good speed, and he has an okay quirk. So nothing crazy like that, but I don't really know if he's gonna get used that much in total. So I think for Australia, the times I've used him, he's actually been pretty good. I think I'm gonna put him in an E tier right now, just because he's an interesting card, but I don't think a lot of people will use him. So next up, let's go to Brandon Marsh here, obviously for the Phillies. I mean, he's got 91 speed, which I think is a huge positive. He's got really good arm and fielding, which is really good in the outfield. And then his clutch, I mean, I think his clutch is one of those factors you just can't look over, especially, you know, that's probably the best attribute on the card. And he's got obviously really good against lefties at 100 and 113. Vision's a little low, but I think he's a little bit better than Estrada just because he can throw people out. He's pretty fast. He comes in those clutch situations when you have someone in scoring position. I think the low power, you know, at 100, power versus right at 83, you can kind of look over, in my opinion. So I think I'm gonna put this at a C tier. I think he's a little bit better. He can get the job done a lot more, and when I've used him especially, he's been really good for my roster. All right, so next up we have Justin Steele. Obviously, this card is really good overall. You know, I've played with him a little bit. I got him parallel 1, and personally, I think he's one of the better ones. You know, at 95 overall, I think, you know, it's a little low, but he's really dominant. You know, when you actually throw him, you know, he's got that great fastball, you know, that he uses a lot. Obviously, the sinker slider is one of my favorite combos in the game, so I think that's really nice that he has that as well. And I'm also a huge fan of that sweeping curve, actually. I didn't think I was going to like it that much, but it can just go so high and go so low into the zone that a lot of guys are going to swing at that one. So I personally like it a lot for that reason. The circle change, I use it occasionally. It's not the main pitch I go to use, though. But, you know, I feel like you could be very dominant with this card, you know, and I just love him for that reason. I haven't really given up a run with him yet. So, you know, he's got really good hits per 9. The Ks per 9 is like the worst stat, unfortunately, but it's like the most important. So I think I'm going to also put him in a C tier. I think he's a pretty good card overall. But, you know, I don't think a lot of people would use this card in rosters just because, you know, crazy known. I mean, he's a Cubs player, but he's not like, you know, the most flashiest or, you know, one of those guys that gets talked about a lot. So next up, we have Jack Sawinski. I think that's how you pronounce his name. This card's pretty decent overall. I mean, it's not like, though. I think Brandon Marsh is a little bit better at center field than this card. He's obviously got the 125 power on righties, 52 vision, really low, has really good clutch and discipline though. And you know, his fielding stats, you know, not really the best that we're seeing with most of the fielders nowadays in this program. You know, the 82 speed is really good as well. But I think I'm gonna put him at a D tier. Just because I think this card is pretty good overall, but I do think that Brandon Marsh is a little bit better. Next up, we got Alex Young. This card reminds me a lot of Trevor Hoffman, just because, you know, he's got that circle change as his first pitch, and it can be really dominant. I've been really good with that card as well, or that pitch as well. He's got the sinker, the 12-6, the fastball cutter. So it's pretty good overall. The 12-6 is one of the best pitches. I mean, those sweeping curveballs that just go up and all the way down the zone are really good overall. Really good stats overall. I think I'm going to put him at a B tier. I really liked Alex Young when I was throwing with him, you know, online and to the CPU. So I like this card a lot. He doesn't really have a bad stat except for the velo, but he's got so much break that I don't really think it matters. So this card's really good. I could see a lot of people using him in the rosters. So I definitely put him at a B tier. All right, so now we're on to the 97 overall cards. We're going to start with Yandy Diaz from the Baltimore Orioles, relief pitcher. This card's okay. He's got really good stats across the board. You know, the 120 hits per 9s, the 102 Ks per 9s, 116 clutch is really good. Got the sinker slider mix with the fastball and circle change. Not a bad pitcher overall. I think he's good for like certain situations. So what I mean by that, it's like I think he's good for an inning. I don't think you can really use him long term, just because, you know, his pitches get so wild that you really can't do anything with him. So I think for that reason, I'm gonna give him a B tier as well. I think he's really good for certain situations where you need the hold. I don't know if he's a save kind of guy, but I would have him in a hold situation, and I think most people would use him as well. So I think I'm going to put Cano in that B tier. Next up, we got Yandy Diaz from the Rays. Obviously had a great April with the Rays doing really well. Overall, first base, can play second, third, left. So really good card. He's got really good power versus lefties and really good contact versus righties. He's got decent clutch, good vision. He's overall a pretty round card for first base. So I think I could put him in a C tier. I just don't see myself using this card. And I don't think other people will, because you have the cards like Yu Chang, Murakami once again that you can also use as well. So I don't personally see him on a lot of rosters, but I do think he's a good card. So definitely going to have to put him in that C tier. Next up is Joan Baez, I think that's how you say his name, from the Rangers. Now this card reminds me a lot of Sam Huff from last year. If you guys don't remember Sam Huff's Future Stars card, he reminds me a lot like him. He was pretty average overall, but he's a really good card. I mean, really good card. I think that this card kind of resembles that. I mean, look at his stats. His lowest hitting stat is 84 on vision, which actually is really good if you think about his lowest stat. So I think this card is one of the better ones in the whole program in general across the board. Really good. He's got really good fielding as well. 95, 90 on the arm, 95 reaction. Just the speed's a little low. So I definitely give him the first A tier of the list. Really good card. I could definitely see myself using him, especially for that catcher spot where we really haven't had like an all-star or Hall of Fame card yet come in the game for that spot. So definitely could see myself using him. So next up, we have Gerald Kelnick from the Seattle Mariners. Really good card, really good player in real life as well. His card's insane. He's obviously way better on lefties. He's got the 121 contact versus lefties and 112 power versus lefties as well. 68 vision, kind of the lowest stat, kind of unfortunate. 99 clutch is pretty good as well. He's got really good arm, and his speed's okay at 71. So not a bad card overall. I probably give him a B tier. When I've used this card, he's been really good. So I'm kind of a big fan of that one in that sense. So not a bad card overall. I can see a lot of people using him as well. So next up, we have Jorge Mateo. Now I think this card is really good. I got to put him in that A tier automatically. I mean, you look at this card across the board. He can play pretty much any position you need him to except first base and catcher. He's got 99 speed across the board, which but speed, steal, and base aggressiveness. Got 89 fielding, and his hitting stats are really good at hundreds across the board. Lowest hitting stat is probably that discipline, but it's not that big of a deal, I don't think. The vision 74 I think is really good, so I definitely gonna put him in an A tier. I love this card when I played him online. I mean, he's really good overall, and I feel like every time I hit the ball, it's gonna be hard contact with this card. So really happy with this Mateo card. Last on the list, we have James Outman. I think this card's pretty solid overall. I think for an outfielder, it's pretty much what you need. He's got really good hitting. He's obviously got that fielding at 93, arm at 93, 90 speed, especially out in that outfield. He's got pretty decent hitting. Lowest stat 62 overall on him. So gonna be a little bit harder to use. So I think I'll put him in that C tier. He's going to be one of those cards, though, that you can definitely, if you get a knock with him, he'll be really good. But yeah, I'm not so high on Outman. All right, so we're going to get over to the 98 so far. So we have Brent Rooker from the A's. This card is phenomenal. I mean, this is a really good card. He's kind of reminds me of Joey Gallo a little bit. Can play, obviously, the outfield and first base. A lot like Joey Gallo. He has, the low speed, the low fielding, but the really good hitting and low vision. So if you connect with this card, I mean, you're hitting this ball 500 feet. So I think for that reason alone, I got to put him in the A tier. Really good card, I think, overall for that hitting, or if you need a pinch hit opportunity, I think he's your guy for sure, especially from the Oakland Athletics. So glad to see him having a great April, especially with 22 ribbies is really impressive. Next up, we have Jose Olivera from the Phillies. Obviously, we've seen this card last year as well. The sinker, cutter, curve, fastball, really good pitch mix. The 125 Ks per 9 make him a really good card. Lowest stat 88 at home runs per 9 and control. So not terrible overall. I think this card is definitely one of the better ones we've seen. And I think I'm gonna give him an S tier because lefty, throws from the left side, can really dot the pitches, especially with the sinker cutter mix, which I'm starting to grow on. I've actually liked this combo a lot recently, and you mix like little curve or fastball in there once in a while. It can be a really good combo that gets a lot of hitters out. So I think it's the first S tier for me. Next up, we have Luis Arias from the Miami Marlins. Obviously, this card can play anywhere. He can play second base, first, third, short, and left. So really good overall. And I think this is like one of the better cards Definitely an S tier for me. 125 hitting across the board, except for that 110 discipline. The power is a little bit low, so I do think not everyone will use this card. So I can see a lot of people putting him in that A tier, but for me it's S. I mean, I've used this card a couple times, absolutely phenomenal with him. And you know, he's not really the best on the fielding or speed side, but he's definitely a contact hitter. I mean, he's been that way his whole career, laying down those pitches. So definitely, if you need a guy to get a hit, I think he's your guy. So gotta give him that S tier for that reason. I mean, he's got the best hitting stats pretty much in this whole program. Next up is Zach Gallen from the Arizona Diamondbacks. And, you know, this guy had a phenomenal April. I mean, you look at his April, pitched really well, only gave up really a couple runs. And, you know, his mix is pretty good. He starts with that fastball. He's got the knuckle curve, which is an interesting pitch we'll talk about in a moment. The cutter, the circle change, and the slider. So slider is really important, I think, on a card like this, just because the curve and the circle change sometimes can't work, which I've seen on some cards. But on this one, I don't know. I've had mixed opinions about it so far. My slider cutter mix, I think, is really good with this card. If you mix a couple fastballs, circle changes below in the zone, maybe a couple curves across the plate might work. But he's a pretty good card when I've used him. You just kind of got to get used to that mix, because the knuckle curve, you know, can be kind of hard to put down in certain spots when I was using it. So you got to kind of mix it in well with that cutter, slider, fastball mix that I was running with. So really good card, I think. I think I'm going to put him in the A tier, though. I don't think he's an S tier yet, just because I don't think I've mastered him. But definitely a solid choice. I definitely got to put him in the A tier. And the last card is the Electric Lightning player, Matt Chapman, who went off in April. Starting off with 82 speed. No really stealing, though. Kind of unfortunate. He's obviously got 90 fielding, 90 arm. Could play third and shortstop out there on the field. 101 clutch, pretty good. 125 contact versus lefties. 102 power versus lefties. 114 versus righties, and 95 power versus righties. 80 vision, not bad at all. But definitely, I think this card's really solid. You know, he's not like the stats don't like pop out at you and be like, wow, he's really good. But he's definitely a solid player. Definitely gonna put him in that S tier for me. But yeah, I haven't got this Matt Chapman yet. But from the gameplay I've seen, he's been absolutely killing the balls. So very excited to see this card on the field for my team. But the third base shortstop kind of mixes right now, because you have guys like Gunnar Henderson, which I want to play, Chipper Jones I want to play, so I'm not really sure where to put him yet. I mean, I might have to DH him, you know, when I do eventually get him on my roster, but personally I think there's better cards in that spot, so I don't really know if he's gonna play on my God squad yet. So especially when it comes to they take the set 1 cards away, don't think I'll be picking him up in that wild card spot, but I do think he's a really good card right now in the ranked system we have. I think definitely for season 2 of ranked he'll be really good. So I think I'm putting him in the S tier. So let me know what you guys think of my list. I think I have a pretty interesting list overall of a couple of these cards I think that are pretty good, and a couple of them I think that are kind of flops. But let me know what you guys think in the comment section below. If you guys enjoy, make sure to like, comment, subscribe, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Peace out, everyone.